What's up, everybody? Welcome back to DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined once again by Jeff Erickson of RotoWire, Daniel Starkand of DodgerBlue.com. We are recapping the first half of the Dodgers season today and talking through who's been the best player, who's been the best pitcher, but maybe more interestingly, who's been the biggest surprise and the biggest disappointment. Guys, as I look at the Dodgers' first half, if I had to headline this for a team that's 51-38, they're tied for the division lead, although they are ahead in win percentage, so technically in first place. Second best run differential in the NL, second in runs scored. My headline would actually be survive and advance. I think this is a group that's battled injuries. It's been a roller coaster of a season, but the fact that they made it to the midway point with the best record in the NL West, they're poised to make some moves going forward. I would kind of give this like a B+ of a season so far for the Dodgers based on how things have shaken out. Jeff, how do you feel about that assessment? Am I being too kind? Am I being too unkind? Where would you land?
I think you're accurate here, especially when you think about how much of a struggle the pitching has been this year. You look at, for instance, how big a disappointment Syndergaard is, and I'm kind of just foreshadowing there a little bit, but and the fact that such a reliance on all the kids, and the kids have been varying level of performances because that's what kids are like. You know, it's we've had a lot of struggles sometimes now with like Bobby Miller struggled the last couple times out, but you've turned to them early. Like Bobby Miller had like 3 outings in AAA, and then they had to say, okay, you're in. And now he's throwing more innings in the majors than he was in AAA per start, too. And they've been able to get by with that. I mean, we know they kept their powder dry in the offseason. You know, this was going to be kind of one of those years like, we're okay with 90 to 95 wins. Just get us in the dance. And then we'll see what happens from there. And then next year, we're going to go big. Yeah.
Daniel, anything you would add to that assessment?
I'm pretty much in agreement. Like he was just saying, I don't think we're coming into this season expecting 111 wins like we were last year. So when you look at it through that lens, I think they're pretty much right on pace where we thought they would be, and that's taking into account all the injuries they've had, all the young guys that they've had to turn to. When if I told you in March that we'd be sitting here at the All-Star break and we'd have already seen, Bobby Miller, Emmett Sheehan, Gavin Stone, Johnny DeLuca's getting at bats, Michael Busch, like the list goes on and on. If you would have told me that's only the first half of the season, I would have said, what are they, 500? Like what, how much went wrong there? So I think overall, I think they're sitting in a really good spot. You mentioned, they're pretty much tied for first. And I still think, if they still have the opportunity to get guys healthy, to make moves at the deadline, which we've talked about, to put themselves, in a better spot going into the postseason. Because we know with the 3 wild card format, they're probably at least going to be one of them. So you just want to put yourself in the best position to be playing your best baseball in October.
Yeah. And you look, Emmett Sheehan, who started games for the Dodgers, probably came into the season 9th or 10th on the starting pitching depth chart. And he's made like 5 starts. So that tells you everything. Let's give out some awards. MVP, I'll share my answer. You tell me if you disagree. I've got Mookie Betts as the MVP for the Dodgers. He's a 4.2 wins above replacement player. He's got 26 home runs. And I think the key differentiator between him and a guy like Freddie Freeman, who's 4th in Major League Baseball, 1 spot behind Mookie Betts in wins above replacement, is just how valuable Mookie has been defensively, not just in right field, but playing competent second base, playing competent shortstop for the first time in his career. So, Jeff, I've got Mookie Betts as the team MVP. I think there's a case for Freddie Freeman. Will Smith, he's top 20 in wins above replacement, but I would say Mookie clearly the MVP for me.
Yeah, and for the reason you cite, the fact that he's willing to play out of position. Well, he's been competent at second, at short. We've heard the phrase, we got to get Jason Hayward's bat in the lineup. It's not something I expected to hear this year. But doing that allowed them to be a little more flexible. His willingness to do that, put himself out on an island. He's a star, and he's playing different positions, and he's doing this for the good of the team. What a great leader for a team. That sort of thing, it's not intangible, it's tangible. You can see it. People are following his lead, and I think that puts him a little bit above just the statistics in and of itself, which are still, he's still the highest in WAR too. And Freeman's great, don't get me wrong, but it's got to be Mookie.
Daniel, on the pitching side, I feel like this is, of the 4 categories we're going to talk about, the easiest. It's got to be Clayton Kershaw, right? 2.55 ERA, 2.2 wins above replacement. We joked beforehand, I suppose you could try and make a case for Evan Phillips but outside of those 2, I don't even think there's a guy that I could name as the number 3 spot in this award.
Yeah, no, first of all, every member of the Dodgers pitching staff pretty much has spent time on the IL at this point. And yeah, I think Kersh has been head and above, the rest. He unfortunately gets that injury, but before that, he had stayed healthy, made every start up until the last week before the All-Star break, and he was great. He has that incredible April where he's pitcher of the month, And then he has the setback in May where he goes a full month with like a 5-something ERA. But then as soon as the calendar flips to June, he's right back to being the Cy Young type guy. So, and that's right when it flipped to June was kind of when everyone else was going down and they're having bullpen games and they got rookies throwing 3-4 innings and they really needed that from Kershaw at that time, and he gave that to him. So I think there's a debate as far as position player goes. I was ready to mention Will Smith. You kind of stole my thunder a little bit. I think if you're talking about value, he might be the most valuable because if you look at who's behind him in Austin Barnes, and I know I don't have to tell this to you, Jeff, that's the biggest drop-off. And if you look at the Dodgers' record, it falls right in line with that. But I think on the pitching side, it's Clayton Kershaw.
All right, let's get to surprise and disappointment. We'll start with disappointment. Jeff, I'll come to you first. I think in my mind, there's 3 kind of candidates. You could go bullpen as a group, how bad they've been. I think you could go Syndergaard, which is, I think, where you're going to go here with how bad he's been. I think there's a compelling case that Julio Urias is the most disappointing as well, if we're just talking about the gap between expectations and actual performance. And it depends on what you expected from Syndergaard, who was actually very good last season, sub-4 ERA. He's been terrible. So for you, Syndergaard, Julio, bullpen, maybe I'm missing somebody. Biggest disappointment is?
I think it's Thor, but I don't want to slaughter him because at the same time he's post-peak of his career, But you're just kind of like, you look at the Dodgers, like we can turn anybody into magic. We did it with Tyler Anderson, my goodness, we talked about that in another segment, but and that's been really frustrating. So added bonus for the front office too, for not anticipating the impact of the rule changes. I think like the shift limitations and the speed in the game. We were talking about how they're just not a fast team right now. I think that they should have been a little bit more prepared for that. I mean, I think that in the Gavin Lux injury, I don't think we talk about that enough. That was a Jenga piece that took everything out and forced them. Okay, we're going to go for Rojas now, and Rojas is gimpy, and he's he is what he is, and all that. And it's just every little step of the way, and it's just they haven't been that same dynamic team.
Yeah, Daniel, anything to add?
Well, I think the front office one there. I think that was a great call. But I had the bullpen. Just a couple numbers here. We know Evan Phillips has been great. Gratterall's actually been pretty good too. Daniel Hudson in his short cameo, Shelby Miller, like some of these guys have been okay, but coming into the season, there were guys from last year who were great. The Dodgers had one of the best bullpens, and they just haven't been this year. Like I wrote down 4 guys here. Yency Almonte has a 5.15 ERA. Alex Vesia has a 6.75 ERA. Phil Bickford has a 5.82 ERA. Victor Gonzalez has a 5.3 ERA. These aren't the main high leverage guys in your bullpen, but that was kind of the next tier of like mid tier to some high leverage opportunities on a day when like Evan Phillips is down and whatnot. And those guys just haven't been up to the task this year. And I know Yency Almonte has been pitching a little better of late. Alex Vesia has shown some flashes. But I just think overall that production is just not getting it done. And if you look at the Dodgers record, it's great, but it could be a lot better. And there's been a lot of games that the bullpen has blown, in the 8th, 9th inning, whatever the case may be. And I know it's not necessarily fair to put it all on them, but when you got a lead late in the game and all you got to do is get 3 outs to close it out, you expect that to happen. So I think the bullpen as a whole, and that comes back to the front office as well. They didn't really make any significant additions in the bullpen. I guess they signed Shelby Miller for $1 million or whatever. But yeah, I think the bullpen as a whole has been a huge disappointment.
Yeah. Okay, last one here. Surprise for the Dodgers. I've got Jason Hayward as the biggest surprise for me. A 121 weighted runs created plus guy that was basically thrown onto the scrap heap and paid to go away by the Cubs. JD Martinez, I think it could be a positive surprise here, $10 million. But I don't know if any of us had him penciled in as a starter in the All-Star game and one of the guys that's atop the league in slugging percentage. So, Daniel, I'll start with you on this one. Surprises, Hayward, Martinez, someone else?
Yeah, I kind of put a group together of their left-handed outfield bats. I think when you look at Jason Hayward is obviously the biggest one. They signed him to a minor league deal, and he's been giving above-average production. David Peralta is another guy they signed late in the offseason for a pretty cheap deal, and he has a rough April, but since May 1st, his OPS is over 900, and he's the last month or so, he's been absolutely on fire. And then James Outman, too. I know he's been struggling lately, but he gets off to that great start. He's got like a 1.6 WAR. So if you would have told me before the season we'd be sitting at the All-Star break and James Outman has a 1.6 WAR, he's on pace for a 3 WAR type season, you'll gladly take that. I still believe he's going to bounce back eventually and get hot again. So I think if you look at overall, those 3 guys are making like a combined like $7-8 million, and you're getting above average production from all 3. So I think after the Lux injury, that was a huge concern. Just overall position player depth.
Yeah.
And I think those guys have helped fill that.
So we go disappointment on the front office. They do get a little bit of flowers here for how they maybe handled those few moves.
Freddie could get a little credit for the Hayward signing.
Fair.
I know he was instrumental in making that happen.
Fair. All right, Jeff, quickly, anything you'd add on the surprise category?
Special shout out to Emmett Sheehan.
Yeah.
He was someone that was like 5th in line among prospect pitchers.
Yeah.
He was in Double-A, and he just blew through the levels so fast. To get to there and have some really quality major league starts. Now, I know his last couple outings were a little shaky, but still, even being there is a win for him. I mean, I get just a hat tip for him. We haven't even seen Ryan Pepio throw 1 inning this year. The day-to-day oblique injury that became 4 months. I mean, it's wild to see that. They needed Sheehan to step up and do some innings. And when he came up, he was huge right away.
Yeah. Well, welcome to being a Dodgers fan, the day-to-day injury that turns into a 4-month injury. Daniel and I are like, we just assume day-to-day means 4 months. So let us know what you guys think in the comments below. MVP, Cy Young, biggest surprise, biggest disappointment. That's Jeff Erickson from RotoWire, Daniel Starkand from DodgerBlue.com. As always, we appreciate you joining us here on Dodger Heads. My name is Jeff Spiegel, and of course, go Dodgers.